Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 538: The Impact of Ignorance and Deception, Part 8. How denial and self reliance defeat the spirit of reliance within your mind. The podcast objectives are: reveal the two primary illustrations of confusion, analyze the transfer of authority within your execution zone, reveal what happens when you deny the truth, and analyze the impact of denial within your mind. Welcome. Now, before we begin today's lesson, I would like to welcome all my beloved brothers and sisters in Yahushua Messiah who have been scattered to the four corners of the earth, who Yahuwah has joined to this ministry for such a time as this. I would also like to welcome anyone who is engaging our podcasts or videos for the first time. We trust you were led by the set apart spirit in finding us. And if you continue to be led, we hope you stay with us, for these are troubling times and an evil day is just ahead. To this end, if you are watching this video on YouTube and you have not subscribed to our channel, click the subscribe button below and you will be alerted whenever we post new videos. Also, if you have any questions at the conclusion of this video, you can ask them using the link in the podcast description below the video player. Last but not least, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up so YouTube can share it with believers like us. A gatekeeper and a false guide. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 512 of our exposition of lawlessness. In the most recent podcast, we analyze the terrific damage the spirit of confusion does to your mind when he is teamed up with nonconformance. Now, I have consistently spoken to the grave danger of error throughout this current phase, but I would have you consider that error is an invading army. To wit, he invades your mind so his master can come in. And his master is confusion, a degree of lawlessness that has the power to cause you to authorize your own spiritual death. Alas, the spirit of confusion will convince you to turn on yourself. And the worst part is you won't even know that he has convinced you to turn on yourself. That is, until it's too late, which speaks to the great danger of confusion. And if you didn't catch it last week, I will restate it at this time. Remember this, my friends. Confusion is the spiritual force that drives you far outside the realm of salvation after you have reached the point of no return. Along these lines, confusion is the gatekeeper and the false guide of deception. As a gatekeeper, he ensures that everyone who reaches the point of no return never makes it back. And as a false guide, he guides men and women further into the progression of death while deceiving them into believing they are following a path that leads to life. And no wonder, for confusion is the focal degree of deception. Now, that said, the question we should chiefly entertain is this: what is the first thought you hit after you reach the point of no return? The answer is sure, and we will address it in this podcast. But first, we must take a closer look at what is happening in your mind when confusion teams up with nonconformance to defeat the great work of the spirit of conformance. Let's get started. A new authority to govern your thoughts. Now, first things first, in understanding the damage that confusion and nonconformance do to your mind, we should analyze the state of your mind at the commencement of this war. Brace yourself, my friends. Now, the image below is a detailed diagram of your thought dimension after your war with error and distrust. In effect, it reveals the impact of ignorance and doubt within your mind. As you can clearly see, every facet of your thought dimension has been conquered save two: your senses and your conscience. Notwithstanding, seeing as the rest of your thought dimension is filled with strongholds, your senses and your conscience are powerless to stop the progression of death within your mind. And their day of reckoning with lawlessness is drawing near. It's just a matter of time. Now, that diagram revealed the impact of ignorance and doubt within your mind. The diagram below is slightly different. To wit, this diagram is high level, and it reveals the impact of deception and disobedience in your mind. Along these lines, every division has been conquered except for two: your sensory region and your execution zone. Now, if you recall, nonconformance is designed to compromise your execution zone. Ergo, as confusion teams up with nonconformance, their target of interest is your execution zone. You can see this by analyzing the image to the right. To wit, confusion neutralizes your execution zone, allowing nonconformance to eliminate the spirit of conformance. Here again, every facet of your thought dimension at this interval has been conquered save two: your senses and your conscience. Please feel free to pause the video to observe the impact. Now, these things being what they surely are, the next question we should entertain is this: what is the immediate effect of nonconformance regaining control over your execution zone? The answer is sure. Nonconformance establishes a new authority to govern the execution of your thoughts. In doing so, he has achieved the first half of the equation in controlling your will. And the new authority he has established is none other than the Ruach of self. Let's talk about it. You are now his enemy. Now, first things first, we should analyze how ultra conducive your thought dimension is for the reemergence of the Ruach of self. First of all, your disregard of Yahuwah's will caused you to have misconceptions concerning his will. And these misconceptions deceived you into migrating outside of the way of holiness. And because you were further infected with error, you continued walking contrary to Yahuwah's will without realizing that you were walking contrary to his will. This is precisely why you fell into a state of confusion, for you were expecting a reality that reflects the safekeeping found within the way of holiness. Look here. You were expecting answered prayers. You were looking for miracles. You believed your fast would be effective, and yet they were not. In fact, your reality is not much better than many who are of the world. And in some cases, your reality is much worse. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, these are only a small fraction of the matters of confusion many are experiencing. And yet, because they are beyond the point of no return, they will not repent. Quite the contrary, they will ignore the fact that they are confused, and they will double down on the misconceptions they were infected with at the first. And although you already know why, I will restate it at this time. Once your mind has been infected with error and confusion, you will endure the full cycle of ignorance and deception, and nothing in this world can stop it. Now, the reason why is sure. It is because confusion leads to denial and delusion, two of the deadliest degrees of lawlessness. For the former completes the progression of ignorance, and the latter completes the progression of deception. You can see this by observing the table below. This table reveals where we are at in the progression of death. To wit, we have completed the first two phases in this progression. In the beginning, we completed the phase of the questioning by analyzing the impact of disregard and misconception. And recently, we completed the phase of withdrawal by analyzing the impact of error and confusion. Along these lines, the reason why confusion is designed to lead you far outside of Yahuwah's will is because you have completed the phase of withdrawal, i.e., the driving force that carries you far outside of Yahuwah's will. Now, as you can see by the table below, withdrawal leads to the final phase in the progression of death. Enter opposition. This phase is highlighted by denial and delusion, the critical degrees of ignorance and deception. And seeing as denial comes first in this progression, we should progress this analysis by analyzing the spirit of denial. Now, it should be clear how denial comes naturally in this progression, for confusion causes you to double down on your misconceptions and your error. This forces you to deny the truth, for truth is contrary to your misconceptions and your error. That's the key, my friends, and the prime objective of this enterprise of death. And as it is so vital to your success, I will offer it to you as a revelation. Consider this, my friends, and be advised. When you operate in denial, the one thing you are denying above all else is the truth. My dear friends, this is why denial is so deadly, for only the truth can set you free. Ergo, when you deny the truth, you are closing the door on life. That is, the abundance of life here and now, and everlasting life hereafter. Notwithstanding, once you have reached this juncture, denial is the only path for you to take. Why? It's because you have already been infected with error and confusion. And as I say, there is no coming back from error and confusion. There simply isn't a way. We know this because you have already completed the phase of withdrawal. And now you're in the phase of opposition. To wit, you are an opponent of truth. And because you are spiritually blind, you don't even know it. Ergo, when you are confronted with the truth, you will oppose the truth because the truth will never align with the misconceptions and errors that have corrupted your beliefs. And so, what will you do? You, my friend, will double down on the error and deny the truth. Why? It's because that's what you do when you operate in confusion. To wit, you panic when your beliefs are challenged and you become even more entrenched in the error of your ways. This leads to blasphemy and the elevation of your degenerate truth above the knowledge of Elohim, which is confirmation that you are in opposition and the reality that you are no friend of Elohim. Quite the contrary, you are now his enemy. Where everything you want to be true can be true. Now, that said, we should analyze the damage of denial within your mind and how that correlates to the fact that you are once again an enemy of Elohim. We should start with what we already know, vis-a-vis the spirit of confusion unleashed an impostor who you defeated once before. And now that he is supported by the full force of ignorance and deception, you will defeat him no more. Enter the Ruach of self. Now, I'm not going to go into the details concerning the nature of his re-emergence. However, his re-emergence opens the door for one of the more lethal degrees of lawlessness to come in. Enter self-reliance. No doubt, this makes perfect sense. For how can you operate in the spirit of self-reliance if the Ruach of self is not governing your mind? The short answer is you can't, which further validates the veracity of this process. Along these lines, denial reinstates every stronghold of self-reliance within your mind. Ergo, as the Ruach of self is the governor of your thought dimension, self-reliance becomes the governing law within your mind. Now, here is the first thing you should consider about this new mental order. Vis-a-vis, denial and self-reliance will have no opposition at this juncture. Here is why. The critical degree of lawlessness is the product of the operations of the fundamental and focal degrees. Ergo, once these are in place, there is no stopping the critical degree. Plainly speaking, once you have been infected with disregard and error, you will naturally be infected with denial. My dear friends, it is simple mathematics. Vis-a-vis, disregard plus error equals denial. And this is why confusion marks a point of no return. It is because the remaining degrees in the progression of death are all critical degrees, all of which are inevitable after a certain point in the progression. And we are at that point in the progression. Now, if that isn't bad enough, denial and self-reliance eliminate reliance. If you recall, reliance gave you a rock to stand on during the most difficult moments of your quest. My dear friends, this is the only way we can walk by faith. And yet, by eliminating the spirit of reliance. Denial and self-reliance take away your ability to walk by faith, for your mind has been purged of hope, trust, and reliance. This reinforces self-reliance and an unfounded default measure of confidence in the ruach of self. My dear friends, you must believe me. This is another worst case scenario. If you recall, the ruach of self is one of the 7 greatest enemies you will ever face in your quest. And you are giving him another shot at destroying your soul by doing even more damage to your mind and your heart than he did at the first. And so, if you thought things were bad then, trust me, it's about to get much worse. The reason why is sure, vis-a-vis the Ruach of self has not only reclaimed his go-to weapon of self-reliance, but he has also been gifted a secret weapon to reinforce the spirit of self-reliance by resisting the truth. And that secret weapon is denial. You can see this clearly by reconsidering a definition of denial. Once more, please. By definition, denial is a refusal to admit the truth or reality of something because it is unpleasant or unbearable to the subject. Here lies the danger of these 2 poisons when taken together, vis-a-vis when you are confronted with the truth. In this scenario, you will deny the truth because it is contrary to the desire of the Ruach of self. Notwithstanding, the Ruach of self remembers your prior victory, and he or she is not going down without an even greater fight this time around. Ergo, he will not settle for the vicious nature of denial. Quite the contrary, he will add self-reliance to the mix, and he will give you an alternative to the truth. Enter self-truth. That is a doctored version of truth that has been concocted by the Ruach of self to reinforce your denial to the truth of Elohim. Now, self-truth is not just any form of false doctrine. Quite the contrary. It is the highest form of false doctrine. It is the deadliest form of false doctrine. It is the evolution of false doctrine to a point beyond recovery, which is why it is aligned with the point of no return. By definition, self-truth is the sum of your personal preferential beliefs, to wit, everything you want to be true to reinforce your worldview. Now, the danger of self-truth should be quite clear, and it should also be quite clear that the majority within this nation and our world have been infected with this spiritual death trait. Not only this, but if you follow the progression of ignorance and deception, it should also be quite clear that the entire exercise is designed to deceive men and women into embracing their false doctrine of choice in order to ensnare them with self-truth. That's the key, my friends, and a critical matter you must understand, and one that you should fear. To wit, self-truth is a snare, it's a trap, and it's one you can't get out of once you're in it, which makes sense, for every step you took on this path was designed to bring you here. Along these lines, the spirits of disregard, misconception, error, and confusion are designed to expose you to a world of infinite false doctrines and beliefs which are contrary to the truth. At the same time, they are infecting you with strongholds that are designed to lead you into the false beliefs that have the greatest power to blind you to the truth. Enter self-truth, the false beliefs you want to be true above all others. Ergo, the entire progression of death is designed to manufacture a model of self-truth that is unique to you and to deceive you into believing that whatever you want to be true can be true. You will have to wrestle with the scriptures to make it true, but anything is possible. Now, that was the inflection. Here is the problem. Vis-a-vis, the Ruach of self is back in business, and your mind has been purged of all faith in Elohim. Ergo, all your faith will now be in the Ruach of self, which is fortified by strongholds of self-reliance. And this, my friends, is the opportune moment for the enemy to offer you your new belief systems. This is your time to operate in self-truth, a world of confusion which is leading to delusion, where everything you want to be true can be true. Trust me, I get it. This seems like an unlikely scenario, but let me tell you something. We are dealing with deception, the deadliest degree of lawlessness. Believe me, when you are in this progression of death, nothing is how it seems. And this is why the majority within this nation will be in terrific shock when they go to eternity and they are cast into the lake of fire. It's because they were led away by self-truth while believing they were doing his desire. This is the impact of denial and self-reliance. And yet, the damage of ignorance and deception is not finished. The damage of ignorance and deception is not done. Now, here is the final word. You force the truth to be on trial when you operate in denial. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, the path you follow to arrive at self-truth may be a challenge to understand, but there is no denying the reality that the majority within this nation are operating in self-truth. And if you don't want to meet their fate, the first thing you must do is deny yourself and be objective. For the man who sees this world through his own eyes will possess a world view that is defective. Heretofore, I recommend do everything within your power to guard your rock of reliance. For without it, you will find you have made yourself an opponent to the truth and the co-signer of the destruction of your mind. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on today's lesson. And if you have any questions, please submit them using the form at pinnacleofholiness.com. And I will respond to you as soon as I can. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast End Times 538, The Impact of Ignorance and Deception, Part 8. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 539, The Impact of Ignorance and Deception, Part 9. I will post this podcast on Wednesday, November 26, 2025. Until then, my friends, Continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim. Continue to watch. Continue to pray. Continue in fasting. And most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.